All right, we are live. Good to go. Hello and welcome once again to the IET India Digital Conversations. Thank you for joining us. This is the 32nd episode or edition of the Digital Conversations, and this marks the beginning of our year long partnership with Siemens. As you can see, Siemens is the presenting partner for this event and a few more to come down the line. Together, we will explore a curated set of digital transformation focused themes and bring both of our subject or global subject matter expertise onto this digital platform. Now, this episode, we are going to talk about hyperautomation, powering enterprise ROI of this decade. Now, what is this new term or the buzzword hyperautomation? As per Gartner, however, hyperautomation deals with the application of advanced technologies, including artificial intelligence and machine learning, to increasingly automate processes and augment human beings. So, in a nutshell, hyperautomation expands the capabilities of robotic process automation, which is also called RPA, with AI, analytics, process mining, and other advanced technologies. Now, this, however, will allow firms to automate day-to-day, mundane, and repetitive processes to facilitate improved efficiency, superior employee management or engagement, resource utilization, and thereby attain a higher return on investment. Now, we are fortunate to have with us the best set of experts we could possibly get, who will explore how this emerging technology can add more value to your business and also answer any questions that you might have towards the end of the session. I am Suman Bhaumik, your host for this series, and I lead the events development for the IET in India. But before I begin this session, just let me take a couple of minutes to talk about who we are and what we do. The Institution of Engineering and Technology, also known as the IET, is a global organization inspiring, informing, and influencing the engineering community to engineer a better world. As a diverse home across engineering and technology, we share knowledge that helps make better sense of the world to solve the challenges that matter. At IET India, we want to grow actionable knowledge, want to solve India-centric engineering issues, and want to enhance people's lives using technology and thought leadership to drive innovation. There is a world of opportunities and knowledge which opens up once you join the IET or know more about the IET as a member. But don't go by what I say, but what I show you in this 2-minute video, which talks about the benefits of becoming an IET member and being part of a global diverse home for over 168,000 engineering and technology professionals in over 150 countries. Just a minute while I play the video.
Get an opportunity to access thousands of technical journals, 300 plus online ebooks, magazines and journals through IET's digital and virtual libraries. 6,000 plus technical and non-technical videos via IET TV, extensive IET white papers and the award-winning ET magazine. As part of your membership, access over 2,000 events, webinars and conferences conducted annually across the globe and gain knowledge and expertise. Be counted as the engineer's engineer with international qualifications like CEng, IEng, EngTech and ICT Tech licensed by Engineering Council UK. Professional registration gives opportunity to IET members to benchmark their qualification to international standards. Enhance your skills, knowledge and experience through our CPD programs. Get a chance to participate in the IET Present Around the World competition, Innovation Awards and Achievement Awards. These events celebrate and recognise incredible talent in the engineering and technology space. In India, the IET reaches far and wide through 8 local networks run by volunteers of the IET. These local networks provide a sturdy platform to network, learn, collaborate and volunteer through for a host of activities such as conferences, technical lectures and workshops. Students and young members can be a part of the IET through the 8 Young Professionals sections and 35 plus on-campus groups. Be a part of our sectors team working across 3 focus areas: future technologies, future of work, and future of mobility and transport. Grab the opportunity to share your expertise and knowledge, network, and broaden your horizons with the industry at large.
All right, there we have it. If you want to know more about what we do and what we offer, please do visit our website to gather more information about this. Now, let's not waste more time and start with the introductions. So, please welcome our first speaker who joins us from Pune, Deepu KV, who is the President and Head of Operations and Customer Service at Bajaj Allianz General Insurance Company. He has led numerous industry leadership projects as the Head of Operations, Communities and Customer Service at the Asia's leading general insurance company. Deepu forefronts the digital transformation drive at Bajaj Allianz GIC, leveraging startups from fintech, insurtech globally, while leading a team of more than 1,600 people in 170 locations. Our second speaker joins us from Bengaluru, Subramania MR, also known as Subs, who is the Vice President at Siemens Technology and Services Private Limited. As the Head of R&D in Industrial Automation Group in Siemens, he has been he has seen 17 years of experience in developing products for factory automation and process automation areas. He has been focusing on automation and digitalization for industry segments. Our third speaker joins from Gurgaon. Vartul Mittal is a leading technology and innovation specialist and a seasoned digital transformation and automation leader. He has been honored with the various eminent awards in digital business transformation and AI. Some of them are like Special Achievement Award in Artificial Intelligence at the Global Summit Awards, Most Innovative Digital Leader of the Year at the 5th Inflection Summit and Awards, a Smart Data Center Management Award, and so on and so forth. And finally, our moderator for this session, who is a known name and someone who have seen, I'm sure you guys have seen moderating some of our digital conversations ever since we began last year, Dr. Vikram Venkateswaran. Dr. Vikram has been with the IIT for a long time now and is an integral part of the advisory think tank, the IIT Future Tech Panel. He works in the emerging area of digital transformation, where he looks at mapping of strategic drivers to digital. He has worked on creating digital transformation frameworks and applied them to organizations across the globe. Without taking any more time, I shall request Vikram to begin the session and give us another cracker of a session today, keeping all of you hooked onto the screen for the next 80 minutes. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you, Suman. I always feel that when a host introduces the panel, the idea is to put a lot of pressure on them. So that when they hear the introduction, right, like a T20 match, the pressure is on that they have to do something. And let's see if I can add on to the pressure as the moderator, because I have three outstanding speakers today who have, I think their breadth of experience pretty much covers almost all the major issues that we see in automation today. And I'm sure they would have navigated some very, very tricky issues. So I'm sure this session, which is going to be a tricky and tough session, would also be easy for them. It's like playing on a turning pitch on the 5th day of a test match with 3 wickets in hand. But let's see how this goes. Good afternoon, gentlemen, and thank you for taking time out. I know all of you are busy. You've been leading large organizations with complex digital processes. But let me start with a basic question. And when somebody says automation, the response I get that I mostly feel automation is not a new concept per se, right? For example, if you look at an organization like Siemens, who incidentally is our presenting partner as well, they've been doing automation for many years. So, Subs, how difficult or easy is it to get that message across that, hey, this is hyper automation, this is a step beyond or further to our journey? How do you get that whole paradigm going within the organization?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's really a hard question. It's not an easy, straight question. Good afternoon, all of you. And let me put this way. If you look at the messaging, whether hyper automation, what does it mean and what does it bring from an automation, manufacturing automation perspective, people still see, how can I solve this with just an increased efficiency, which is the one way to see the automation, but that is not the end of the world. If you look at how the evolution of the automation itself has happened, I don't want to go too much history, but definitely I would rather say between industry 3.0 to industry 4.0, what you're talking today, there's a magnitude of difference. Industry 3.0 brought robotic automation with a maximum focus for efficiency, quality, maximum value to the customer through automated methods where mass production is at ease. However, what we are talking today is mass production with customization in Industry 4.0, which is nothing but a flexibility. And flexibility is not just customization to the individual, but also increase the efficiency simultaneously. This is a message which we always take through entire organization, where what are the things that can help us this flexibility to be accomplished, because we have tried out all the known technologies of the current situation. The only ways to try out is through the latest leading technologies which are solving many of these problems and absolutely integrating into our flexibility dimensions. That's where we say hyper automation is an essentiality to look through today to push the corner cases. Like, for example, when we look at quality detection, there is a limit to which you can automate, but there are still in the field adjacency areas where our current automation is not possible. Customers are facing different situations. So there are integrated analytics based, we bring as predictive discussions on how to arrest quality. There again, AI technologies get shipped in to provide customers. I come from a production automation perspective. To provide a value to the customers, end-to-end automation definitely need an integration of multiple technologies, like procurement lines properly integrated and they do not become our bottleneck, which means blockchain technology is finding the answers there clearly. At the shop floor, there are multiple ways we need to reduce the cycle times. Today we see there are intelligent platforms that are coming up so that our location concepts can be easily integrated through. All these are happening because AI and ML is integrated and penetrating through. And this is how I see hyper automation is essentiality, and messages are connected to, not to say that automation can be achieved, but to enter the legs and spheres where automation is not able to penetrate through.
Excellent, Subs. I think I couldn't have put it better, because you have a legacy, you have a history of automation, and here you come with a new concept. The tendency is to dismiss it, right, rather than to look at it as something that solves problem. But I like the fact that you're saying, okay, we are a customer-centric organization. Customers want it. Customers want this automation that improves a lot of things for them. Products are better. You have more efficiency. Employees feel better. I think that's a very good concept. But on that question, right, I'll go to Deepu. So Deepu, you've run a lot of digital transformation initiatives, and congratulations. I see you very actively participating. When customer praises you or does not praise you, you're responding to them. And as a president, as a leader, I think that's phenomenal. But I've done digital transformation initiatives, and the challenge is you have to prepare the organization for it. It can't be entrusted on them. Suddenly it becomes very painful then. So one is two parts to my question. One is, how do you prepare the organization for digital transformation, right? Like in Bajaj Alliance case, you've done so many things. Second is, what is the impact on human capital? Because they are fearful, because this is going to affect them. And where the fear is going towards, though it's unfounded. In India, at least, we know these fears are unfounded. But how do you prepare the organization? What's the impact on human capital? Two questions.
Thank you, Vikram. I think, both are very relevant questions, given the entire accent on digital transformation, globally in today's context. Mm-hmm. Coming to your first question on, how do you prepare the organization? I'm a trained and certified, Lean Six Sigma black belt from GE, where I worked for 20 years, before moving to Bajaj Alliance. And one thing which Lean Six Sigma teaches you is change management is not necessarily a smooth process. So there are two factors which drive, Vikram. I'll just try and summarize the essence of everything that I've learned in two dimensions. One is, start with the customer. You see, the moment you pick data from customer, then it's not a conversation where you are saying that I feel this is right or I think we should do this. It's about basically saying that the customer is saying this. Then what happens is, you find that, that the resistance, gets lowered dramatically. So I think clearly, I think that's, a lighthouse for various organizations. start with what customers are saying, look at data from customers, because it becomes very difficult to refute that. The second aspect, Vikram, is taking your stakeholders along. And again, what Six Sigma teaches you is do the heavy lifting right up front. Sometimes there is a tendency, to work within yourself or within your team, and then, spring a surprise on your unsuspecting stakeholders just before launch. And that's when, you find a lot of, objections come to the fore. Whereas, you have to, take the bull by the horns right up front, figure out who are the stakeholders who are supporters. And that's something, which even Six Sigma teaches you. Who are the sponsors, who can be potential detractors? How do you handle objections right up front so that your stakeholders become your co-creators? And then what happens is, if you do the heavy lifting right up front, as you move towards the destination, the journey becomes, smoother and smoother. Therefore, by the time it comes to a POC, you find everybody on board. Objections have been, have been taken care of right up front. Therefore, there's an enterprise-wide effort to make it successful, because everybody is invested in the entire process. And therefore, when the rubber hits the road, the chances of failure are very low. So these are two ways, by which you, prepare an organization for success. Now, coming to your point on, human capital. Again, why do people become, insecure, right? There are two things which happen to the mind. You form a perception. Now, when is perception formed? When there is no information, right? The mind is not blank. Either you give information and, the mind forms an informed opinion, or you don't give information and the mind forms a perception on its own. So the key, and while it looks extremely simple, is to be very transparent upfront. Be very clear about, your strategy down to the person at the frontline levels. As they say, the tone at the top should have an echo at the bottom. Everybody needs to be on board, and they clearly understand, what is in it, why are we doing it. I think a key aspect of communication is why. Very often we focus on the what and the how, but the moment people become bought in and they understand that this journey is irreversible, this is the way organizations need to propel themselves forward, and then they become, part of it, and then, then you find, that there's a greater degree of willingness. And the other is, you look at, organizations, around the world, right? I mean, you would find retrenchment for various reasons. Organizations downsizing, organizations having failed business models, right? How often, have you found organizations saying that we have embarked on a massive digital transformation, therefore, we have retrenched people? What they may come back and say, is that we may not hire going forward, right? Because we'll scale up. But very often. So use that data, convince people, and then you find, that it becomes easier than you thought otherwise.
I think that's an excellent point, Deepu. As a matter of fact, I mean, those of us in digital, after a digital transformation experience, the headcount actually increases, because you create that efficiency, you create cash flows, you are able to tap into new market segments, and there is no way you can manage things with your existing workforce. I mean, I haven't seen a single organization with successful digital transformation. Successful is the key, who have actually become lesser than what they were. But I think that's an excellent point, Deepu. And I wish a lot of people are taking notes, because I think a lot of this is actually pearls of wisdom, which you don't get, out of internet chats and social media. And this is only possible if you've actually gone through the fire yourself. So I have another interesting question for you, Arthur. Right? Sub's talked about, how the legacy of the organization and how to put customer in front. And Deepu also pretty much said the same thing: use the customers as your lighthouse. Work with all the stakeholders. Use Six Sigma principles, which is very interesting. But Arthur, one of the challenges I've seen in India, specifically in a lot of our organizations, and also I think this is slightly globally also, there's a lot of gap in the way a process is done and how it is defined and written. Because there is a lot of, every individual brings his own flavor, his own customization to a process. And somewhere there's a big gap between these two. So how much of a documentation gap have you seen in your experience in working with, both large financial institutions as well as the organizations you work with? And what is your observation on the best practices that can be found?
Very pertinent question, Vikram. So when I talk about documentation, so see, yes, documentation of a process and creating workflows is very important for any process that we decide to automate. The reason is because earlier automation was happening in silos in different pockets and different BUs. But now when we try to scale it up at an enterprise level, then we have to ensure that all the different documentations which are available across level 4, level 5, or level 6 also, they are interconnected when we come down from bottom up to a level 0 or level 1. And that was initially not a point of concern, but when different companies are scaling it up across their front office, middle office, and back office, they've realized that documentation or any when I say documentation, definitely I talk about the process design documentation, PDD documents. They are not well in shape, and that creates a gap when we bring the entire synergy across applications, the upstream and downstream. Plus, to ensure the feasibility of auto simple complexity, medium complexity, high complexity process can be very well identified, and to the extent to which we can deliver the automation, and accordingly the promises or commitments are made to the senior leadership. And some processes that we automate, we can do them end to end rather than only automating a part of the process. Unless we have the right documentation, right workflow already defined, we cannot attack the entire use case end to end. And we end up doing automation only for a partial use case. And this require a lot of human intervention in terms of from the process owners, process agents. So we document it very well. Now, like the topic today we have is hyperautomation. And hyperautomation, which has changed the entire outlook of automation, processes, documentation, being a major part. We see that how we bring in different technologies to ensure that the entire process or a use case can be very well automated. And when I say hyper automation and documentation, combining the topic of the theme today and combining the question, process mining has taken a front seat in last 18 months across hyper automation or RPA companies. So companies which were initially not focusing upon process automation, process mining, for the likes of Celonis, UiPath have taken a good shape, and they are focusing a lot in creating lot of opportunities in process identification, process mining during the documentation stage of the process. And this documentation of processes has also become more and more, I'll say, easier now, which used to be a lot more complex before, because we can do it with the help of multiple SaaS-based platforms on the go, and multiple users can collaborate together. And the entire knowledge management has become a very disciplined affair when we talk about bringing any documentation in the hyper automation process assessment in today's world. So probably when we look at the entire capture of process discovery phase, and then we do the playbacks of the process, this entire documentation, process mapping, process modeling at a task level, at a process level, has taken a very important front seat, or probably the mind share across all the automation experts.
I think you bring up a few interesting points, right? And what I want the all those who are watching this and listening to this is to notice. I think Martul makes a very important point on documentation. Without documentation, you are just underestimating or overstating the problem. Right? It could be both ways, and it definitely leads to incorrect definitions, and then the digital transformation goes awry. The other thing I really liked about it, Martul, I think this is something that is picking up in the industry significantly, is process mining, which does away with, you might have customized the process to suit you, but with mining, you should be able to capture the necessary steps at level 7 or level 6, and then obviously the automation, hyper automation, and digital transformation becomes much easier. So let me come back to you, Subs. I think I said this is going to get tricky, and it's going to get very tricky from here. One of the famous questions I've been asked for the last 10 years in this field, whether it was starting with digital and today more on hyper automation, is how do you calculate the ROI on a successful project? And I would love to hear your views on that.
Okay, that is not just tricky, it's also massively loaded question. Thanks for that. And I think I come from an automation background, from a digital enterprise for the manufacturing automation background. I would comment from this perspective. The return on investment is at a top level. If I am an CEO and entrepreneur, I would always measure from what is my market share increase first. What is that I am trying to accomplish as a different market entry through this? That's the first point. The second ROI, I would also say this is a virtual ROI, but if I don't do it, how it will hit me hard. In the past, people used to think, who is my competitor? Where should I focus to feel the risks? Where should I manage my risks? But with hyperautomation, there are lots of new players coming in, because of which I do not even know threats that will hit my market in multi dimensions. So the watching of the risks of the market, risks of the equal players itself is a big ROI I need to really watch through. The third, I would say this is more from a product perspective as a performance in the market. I would simply say here there are lots of operative measures. Simply something like, how do I make sure my rollout of models to the market in a faster cycle time? Do I use right DevOps? What is the cycle time there? Then is it reusable? What kind of extensions we can do it out of the same models what we use? These kinds of operative measures, there are lots of measures available. But predominantly I would put it as risk watch is an important aspect from a big player perspective, because the corners of risks are from different perspective and not just from automation perspective here. Coming back to, as an organization, we also have to measure our KPIs, ROIs from a long-term perspective. Is today's organization capable to handle future of automation? Future of automation, at least from Siemens perspective, we are driving very strongly in terms of digital enterprise, cloudification, with edge technologies coming in, which will make industrial users behave very much like normal IT users. That means our product capabilities have to be developed by people who have more IT flavor, which means, is my employees capable for futuristic technology needs? How am I scaling? Those are additional internal measures as an organization we need to govern. I think under these frames, every organization, every product line has to little customize their watch.
Okay, very interesting. So what I'm hearing from you is keep a long-term view. Don't keep a short-term view. It is not a short-term game. But at the same time, keep the risks of the market. If you're not automating, what are the risks? If you're automating, then what are the risks? Try to balance them out. And also look at things like market share, which is, I think, more important for you.
I
Rather
just want
than
to add additional input, Vikram. The important aspect is, today in the automation world, money doesn't flow because I have hyper automation extensions. But if I don't do that, my customers will move away very soon from me. That's how I
understood. So it's more of a, rather than looking at it from a market, even for status quo, you might need automation. That's
absolutely, you hit
just
the
to
point.
maintain what you have.
Absolutely.
I was seeing that Deepu was very happy as you were answering this question. So let's pose the same question to him, Deepu. So Deepu, Subs gave us a good, I think a very solid framework construct. Maybe works more for manufacturing, but from your angle, if you are leading and you've led so many digital transformation projects, so how do you measure ROI for a successful one?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very topical question, Vikram, because when everybody is forced to go to the digital arena, the first question which is asked is, where is the bang for the buck? So this is, my perspective, and again based on actual experience, in both the organizations that I worked in. See, the first thing, Vikram, is always to start keeping customer first. Sometimes, there is a tendency, to get influenced, by the latest buzzword in town, right? You basically go and attend various conferences and hear about, blockchain, IoT, AI, machine learning, NLP, and you feel like, if you don't do it, you're not there. But the fact is, every solution does not have to be, the latest state of the art, digital solution which is out there in the marketplace. Ultimately, you need to pick what works for your customers. Therefore, start with the customer problems first. I think that is the key. The second thing is, once you've identified the key customer problems, right, and that is very easy to figure out. For example, if you get feedback through your contact centers, figure out what are the top 5 reasons why customers are calling you, right? As simple as that, or whatever grievance mechanism that you use. The second is what I've seen in good organizations, and to the point that Sub's made on a multi-year framework. It's very important to figure this out right up front, that if I'm going to make an investment of X, and today from an operational expense I'm spending Y, how is X going to give me a return over a period of time that this investment ultimately has to eat into the Y, right? Either my cost dips or my revenue goes up. I mean, you need to set out clear metrics right up front. I mean, it's like, when you go on a journey, you need to know where you're going, right? You don't go on the road and then say, by the way, let me just, go here, right? You need to be very clear about, the journey right up front. Even if you don't hit it, but at least you know what the destination is. That's the second thing. Then once you go through the journey, Vikram, to my mind, there are 3 sets of metrics, and these are metrics which have been, established over a period of time, which will help you measure ROI. One is, straight out, financial metrics. I invested X, and over a period of time, because I've done this, I've been able to take out, so much of operational expense. Now, here there is a very important point, Vikram, which is where I think, a lot of people miss out. I think the point is that if I had not invested in this, then I would have spent, so much expense. I would have incurred so much more expense. I think that needs to be agreed on, and then, quantified right up front, because nobody really worries about, the expense which could have been spent. Everybody worries about the expense which actually happened. If I had not digitized, I would have had to add so many people, I would have had to add, so much more, non-people expense. I think that's clearly something which we need to quantify as we go through it. The second is, because I said the second set of metrics, because I said, you start with the customer. Again, going to the point that Sub's made, you see there are process metrics. For example, was my NPS score, it was X before the journey. Now when I do it, what is my NPS score? When I look at my grievance ratio, it was X, it is Y now. And there are process metrics as well. Earlier, I would maybe spend 4 hours on it. Now I spend 4 minutes. So a combination of, process metrics and customer metrics. That is the second bucket, which are soft metrics compared to the first set of financial metrics, which are hard. Then the third is the intangible ones. Can you measure your brand, and then see, what is the impact on your brand? Are you seen as a digitally savvy leader? Are you seen as an industry first player? Some of these can't be measured through, short-term outcomes. But if you are there, they give you a lot of, long-term benefits. The kind of talent you attract, the kind of negotiating power you have, when folks come to you, because there are players who want to work with startups, and then there are players startups want to work with. So are you a marquee name, with whom players want to work, so that's where your brand comes in. So if you can figure out a way to quantify, the third piece, and then if you put your, hand around these 3 metrics, then you will find that, as you go through the journey, maybe you start out, with a rough estimate, but you're able to fine tune it over a period of time. And over a period of time, you are actually able to convert art into science.
Yes, that's very well put, Tipu. I really like the construct. Financial first, obviously money speaks. We can't be naive in this world saying that I look at my finances. In the end, you may not be around to look at it by that time.
Right.
Second is the process metrics, more from your time taken, your throughput, and also things like NPS. NPS is, for those who are not aware of it, a net promoter score. Very important score to ascertain how happy your customers are with you. You can also look at something like a CSAT rating. But NPS is a very powerful measure. So if you want, this is the first time I'm hearing NPS in an automation context. It's a no-brainer, but the first time I'm hearing it. And the last is obviously a brand, and then brand is a very powerful thing. In your case, Deepu, I'm pretty sure you go to an alliance, Bajaj Alliance, primarily because it's Bajaj Alliance. The brand matters a lot. It means trust and transparency and so many things. Varthul, I don't want to leave you out of the fun. You have worked with some major banks and major consumer good companies. So most of what I notice is a lot of it is B2C for you, though you've done some B2B as well. So how would you rate it? I mean, you're somewhere in between Subs and Deepu. Deepu is totally, talking about customer because he's totally in with the customers, while Subs is still having that B2B2C kind of a construct. But then for you, what are the ROIs? How do you measure ROIs? What's your take on it?
See, for me, if I have to quantify it, I'll definitely talk about the primary ROI would be the CSAT. So ultimately, customer has to be satisfied in terms of whatever goals customer is laying out. Whether the goals are for cost reduction, revenue enhancement, compliance, or whatever tangible, non-tangible factors we can list out. So if customer is achieving those outcomes, probably I'm the one who's able to help the customer in the managed services manner, or even as a retained services manner to provide the service to a customer. That is my primary thought over it. Secondly, currently what happens is, like we all have been hearing it for last couple of, I'll say, months, that digital transformation slash automation slash hyper automation, all these buzzwords will keep on changing as Gartner will keep coining them or keep remodifying them. So something new will always be there in the industry every 6 months. But the concept is very clear that we are using technology to solve problems and with a defined ROI. So that is the purpose of technology. And like we all know, technology is not a capital expenditure; it's a operating expenditure, where we know that what kind of ROI we will generate and what benefit we will realize, whether it's a 6 month, 10 month, or a 2 year horizon. So, at last, like Deepu very well pointed out, it is not necessary that we have to use the latest technology forcibly. So again, like a common analogy, we look for a nail than a hammer. So, but many people look for a hammer than a nail. So then again, the entire equation goes wrong. So we have to look for a problem first, then find a solution for it. Rather than we have a solution with us, whether it is for the likes of IoT or blockchain or any industry 4.0 solution, and then we start finding the problems or use cases. So it has to be reverse. Then whether we use the erstwhile Lean Six Sigma or even robotic desktop automation, forget the hyper automation, even not even the RPA. We may use a RDA kind of a platform for a beautiful platform which used to exist earlier, like OpenSpan, erstwhile OpenSpan, now Pega. So there are platforms which have done wonders in last 15 years, which were less expensive in terms of technology deployment, in terms of ease of integration, ease of scalability. So the idea is we look at the right solution to a problem. It may not be a very deep in technology, but it can be a simple stuff, more of a create. Like again, Deepu pointed out that we look for something that where we go from the art of doing things to the science of doing things. Again, the same thing. I believe that technology is no longer a science. It is more or less has become an art. So it is an art. How we do it, what technology we adopt it to get the desired outcome, it's more of a art. Technology is just an enabler. So the way I look at it.
Yeah, I almost laughed when you said the hammer and nail. It's my favorite example because when you lead with technology, that's a challenge you get because you think, oh, I have this now how to use it. But keeping the customer in mind, understanding where your pain points are, and then seeing what will solve it. Sometimes it could be just process. Sometimes it could be just people. Some cases it's a combination of them with technology. And then, like you said, remote desktop, your desktop automation was working very well up to a point in time. Obviously, now it seems to be older technology, but that might be the solution in cases. So I think, Vatul, I think that was very well said. I can see the experience coming through, and I'm sure that a lot of those who are listening to it will be gaining from it. I see some questions have started coming in, so I think we'll take them in some time. I still have a few questions to ask you, gentlemen, while I have you on the spot. But at the same time, if you have any questions to ask to Deepu or Soups or Bartul, if you have specific ones, name them out. If you don't, then just put the question in here, and then I'll take the call as to who would answer them. But coming back to you, Soups, one of the opportunities we have is selection of candidates, right? when you select a particular candidate for digital transformation or automation. So, do you have any criterias that you use at times as to what ROI is one criteria, the KPIs are another criteria, but apart from that, do you have any other criterias that you keep in mind that people can learn from or they can replicate in their respective fields?
My view, my 2 cents here, Vikram, it's something like this. Do I look for? Definitely yes. What do I look for? I'm going to tell about two parts. One is the hygiene part, that is the passion to work in the automation area, passion to work in the hyper automation area. If that is there, acquisition of technology, the acquisition of skills is a matter of a little support, enablement. However, in my experience, I'm seeing, especially in the technologies which are changing the paradigms, especially with the digitalization process where co-creations, my experience is technology specialists are in the junior lots, something like people who are below some 10 years of experience. They bring a very fast solution. They think it is complete, but they miserably fail in terms of complete complexity understanding of the customer problem. So it's a combination of a team formation is what I look for, and not as a particular candidate can solve a problem. And when I say team problem, it needs a, I agree with Varthul that customer problem should be in the front. And for understanding customer problem, there's an amount of market understanding, domain understanding, and a technologist will play a solution play there. And it's a combination only is possible today, because there is no single answer in these leading technology areas as one individual available who can solve all these three paradigms. So it's a team play, I would say here. The team is 2 people, 3 people, 8 people. That is what we should look at.
Brilliant, Subs. Brilliant. I think this is pretty much in line with what I've heard from the other leaders in the industry. See, we do succeed as a team, and we can't play with 11 batsmen or 11 bowlers. I mean, that team will fail miserably. I don't know if it's been tried. But coming to you, Deepu, uh, the years you've spent in digital and in GE, is there a method to get that ecosystem play going? Is there a framework where I can get these cross-functional guys to work together, like Sub said? You can't just have lead with technology without understanding the complexity of the customer, or lead with process without understanding whether technology is there or not. But is there a midway, and how do you build that ecosystem?
Yeah, sorry, I just unmuted myself. Vikram, no, I think it's it's a question which is perfectly normal. When it comes to the nuts and bolts of doing digital transformation, because normally people are focused on outcomes, whereas the process is what gets you the outcome. And yes, there is a time-tested formula. The first thing, Vikram, like I said, is always start with the customer. Because the moment you bring the customer into the game and you say that this is what customers are telling us, it just becomes a very easy way of one looking at the right problem, and the other is ensuring that you minimize any debate around what the problem is. Because when customers are speaking, it's objective. I mean, it's as apolitical as it gets, right? So that's clearly a point. The second is, Six Sigma teaches you, that it's important to get project sponsorship, right up front. So involve your stakeholders, and I'm saying stakeholders, not just your friends, because sometimes there's a tendency to pick only those people who will support you. You need to pick everybody who's impacted, irrespective of whether he's a promoter or a detractor. Get them on board. If there are objections, figure out ways to handle them. In fact, there are various frameworks, right? You classify people as, those who will approve, those who could object, those who can be a resource. How do you handle it? There are time-tested, techniques, for, handling these internal discussions. And then, you go about, doing this from a cross-functional perspective. Now, because you use the word ecosystem, I just want to bring in some other dimensions. One thing again, Vikram, which is very important is it's extremely important to do benchmarking, because you operate in a market, where there are customers. It's not that you operate in a silo. It's not a vacuum. So it's very important to figure out, what competitors are doing. And today, because we're talking about digital transformation, I want to bring in one very important point. And that point is you can't be benchmarking only with your peers. Because what happens if you are launching a mobile app, or let's say you are launching a chatbot, the customer is going to compare his experience with your digital asset, not with the best in your industry. He is going to compare it with the best that he's had across industries. So you need to do industry agnostic benchmarking, which is the best mobile app, which is the best chatbot, right? And then ensure that, you basically, bring in that dimension so that, your product is ultimately the best, which is out there. And then, coming towards the end of the journey, again, there are three dimensions I want to bring in. One is the point I made earlier, assisted automation, because it is a journey sometimes. You don't come out with, the perfect product on day one. You come out with an MVP, minimum viable product, and then you keep on perfecting it as you go ahead. Because sometimes in the quest for perfection, you lose out on speed. The second thing, because we are saying digital, and again, which is very important in the Indian context, is you have to be multilingual. There's sometimes a tendency to stick only to English, which is the language of choice, in digital transformation. You have to be multilingual if you need to amplify your reach, to all customers. And the most important part, which is what people miss out, especially when we say ecosystem, it's always an iterative process. You launch it in the marketplace, you get feedback, you perfect it, it's a continuous process. So when you do this, then, because you're benchmarking, because you're looking beyond your industry, because you got your, stakeholders right up front, the customer has been there even before the journey has started, and you go about this, typically you will find that, the rate of your success rate of your POC is substantially higher.
Well, I agree with you, Deepu. This is wonderful insight. I have seen that happen with e-commerce chains. Just a few days ago, I was trying to buy something, and the experience was extremely frustrating because there is one e-commerce player that has really spoilt us. Because everything, I don't want to name them because I don't want to provide that free publicity. But you're right. So when the minute they come onto your platform, they're going to benchmark you against the best in the industry, and they're going to say that hey, why isn't this as smooth as that?
Right.
And you've lost the perception battle.
Exactly.
And the other point you made, which I really like, is that building an ecosystem takes time. It's an iterative process. So you have to have the patience. And obviously, sometimes you will have to involve people you don't like necessarily.
Yes.
But
Yes.
idea is to do business, do digital transformation, not to create a club of, where everybody likes everybody and the mutual admiration club goes on.
Exactly.
So that brings me to one other interesting question I've been asked a lot of times, Vartul. I thought I'll ask you. So, is hyperautomation a paradigm by itself, or is it a tool in a toolkit? How do you see that playing itself out?
So, Vikram, I'll say that it's a combination of tools when I talk about hyperautomation. So, and it's not always necessary that we have to use all the tools together. So it's a combination. Will again answering the same question. We choose a hammer for a nail, not the nail for the hammer. So we make a combination of few mix of hyper automation technologies to ensure that they form an integral part of the entire digital transformation journey. Plus, there are other things also, as I discussed earlier, which plays an important role in digital transformation. We are like that are like a simplification, harmonization of the processes before we start doing automation. And when we start doing the entire standardization of these processes, one thing that comes into play is that how we start from the voice of customer, create the entire process flow to the level of detailing that we can simplify it well before even going for hyper automation / automation as a larger toolkit. Plus, when all the CIOs, CTOs, CXOs, they talk about their digital transformation journey, digital first approach, cloud first approach, the best buzzwords we hear everywhere. So it's all about that whether we do cloud first or digital first agenda, how well we are driving the end customer expectation. Customer again can be internal or can be external. Plus, what level of analytics we are using to find out the relevant details, relevant levers to get the insights and which are the right processes which will give us success, and we should optimize our efforts, or every single dollar that we spend on the transformation journey should be responsibly spent rather than we do something, we fail, and then we are doing it because we have a luxury to fail. So my point is that when we have got enough success stories, enough failure stories available right now with us from the industry, we should leverage them and ensure that we pick the right processes first. Also, the right combination of hyper automation technologies to ensure that we are able to combine them and we can bring in the right level of transformation, whether it is at a tactical level or it is a larger shift towards the entire remodeling of the business unit or the organization.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So I've got some very exciting questions. I think you're going to love this. And I was slightly distracted because I saw some of them popping up, and I was thinking, okay, are we really creating a thought process in people's minds, or are people just listening to us in the afternoon and waiting for us to finish? Looks like we made a dent somewhere. So this is one of my favorite topics, and I'm going to wait. They have not named who I should ask, so I'm free to ask to anybody. So let me start with you, Vartul. I think this is a question you would enjoy. So our academic institutions are way behind the curve, right? And it's not their fault. It's the way the course curriculum and everything has been set up. The question has come from a professor at MIT, which I'm assuming is either Manipal or Maharashtra, where he's asked that we have all this. We teach students about automation. We do teach them about a lot of things, but we don't teach them about ROI. We don't teach them about how to calculate investments into their ROI. What is it? And they're saying we are an autonomous institute, so I'm assuming it's Manipal. So they're saying, what can we do from a academic perspective? Because as we are an autonomous institution, we can do this. What can we do from an academic perspective to bridge that gap?
Perfect, perfect. So thank you, Vikram, for pointing it out to me. The way I look at it is, see, most of the academic institutions have been trying to keep pace with the industry, but there is still a huge gap. The case studies which have been practiced in the institutes have been the legacy, the Harvard Business Review or MIT case studies which have been there, or the Stanford ones. But are they really relevant in the area where we operate today, where we talk about technology in every possible function, whether it's HR, finance, marketing, operations, or whatnot? So the industry sessions which most of the institutes are definitely doing, I don't deny that there are industry sessions that happen, but the right industry sessions from the right digital transformation, I'll say, leads will actually help students get an idea that what are the possible reasons of failure in the adoption of digital journey, and what has been the key areas to ensure that how they can succeed. So there are multiple case studies which can be shared with different set of students, whether whether they are specializing in HR, marketing, operations, or let's say even for engineering graduates. So how they can look upon various technologies to master upon, how different MBA institutes can talk about that, what are the latest areas of technology adoption, and accordingly students, once they find that there is a gap what they have learned and what is being practiced in the industry, they will be able to fill it much more, I'll say, comfortably. And that is the entire purpose of ensuring that there is a complete collaboration between the industry and academia. That's from my side. Rest, I am sure Deepu can add a lot to it.
Yeah, I actually I'd like views from everybody because this is a burning problem for all of us, right? Um, so Deepu, your views and Subs, please be prepared. Sorry to put you on the spot also.
Yeah, no worries. No, I think it's a good question. I'll try and bring in a different dimension because Vartul has covered a lot of aspects. One thing which I am seeing in academic institutions, because I get invited to speak at a lot of B schools on the topic of digital transformation, both in the country and outside the country. So one thing I have seen, whether it is the interest level from students or from of course professors, is I think I think the intent to be part of, to be a part of the party, so to speak, I think is very high. So therefore, the bringing in, us to, basically give guest lectures, on contemporary topics, and of course an empirical experience, how it's happening. I think what may be required, and this goes beyond institutions. I think there are various bodies which also approve curricula and syllabi, is to ensure that now agility comes into that. When you are formulating your course curriculum for the next year, in terms of being very agile, right? For example, you can't go with the same course material that you had last year because COVID-19 has changed the entire landscape. So now when you do it next year, how do you ensure that it takes into account the new way of doing things, right? So I think that agility will be very important, because if you want agility in practice, it's got to be that much faster in theory, right? So that's just my 2 bits of wisdom.
Yeah. So yeah, I only need to add to Deepu what Deepu said. Yes, correct. Agility in theory absolutely has to be super speed. And here I would only suggest is, I am sure there are lots of pragmatic ways to see how the market's ROIs can be ascertained, how it can be translated to technology, and what does it mean technology to be the leader in the technology fronts. These kinds of information through guest lectures and course curriculums adapted is a must. More or less all the universities and institutions, they are doing earnest attempts for making students to listen to as well as shape them high top notch technologists. But what is they need to focus is, how is this getting adopted in the organizations from a EVA calculations perspective? What is that in principle initial gate decisions that they do in the companies for investment to be signed off? So those kinds of informations they need to fuse into the students so that they are more entrepreneurial whenever they enter any organization. I think that's the only additional input I can share it here.
Excellent, Subs. I think that's very important. I think educational institutions for India hold the key, because that's where I think our future is going to be made or broken. So I hope a lot of the professors who are on this call and even students are listening to this. Deepu, as you said that you have spoken about digital transformation in India, B schools, and as well as abroad, I'll introduce you to a question from South Africa.
Sure.
There's a listener who's from South Africa, and she has a very interesting question. One
Right.
part I understood, the other part maybe you can shed some light.
Sure.
The thing is that senior stakeholders are very scared of digital and especially automation, right? And the reason for that, they say, is that it will affect their revenues. I've always equated digital to changing the engine of an aircraft mid-air, right? It will go down slightly before, and there'll be some turbulence before it goes up. But how to convince the stakeholders, which is the tricky part, right? The second part of the question I'm going to ignore, because she talks a lot about how do you convince the employees. I think we have discussed that impact on human capital. I think that was the very first question I put to you. So how do you talk to the senior management and convince them that revenue will get affected realistically, but it's good for the medium and long term?
Yeah. No, I think it's a very relevant question. Gets asked in a lot of corporate contexts. See, I think convincing senior stakeholders is, at one level, I think it's very simple. Ultimately, you got to point out to people what is the risk of not coming on board. So let me give you an example. Let's go back a few years in time or a few decades in time. Imagine we had those typewriting institutes, right? And somebody comes and says that I'm not going to worry about computers. Now, before you know it, the rug has been pulled from under your feet. Nobody is coming to you, and everybody is going to computer institutes. So if you ignore change, it does not mean that that change is not going to come into your door, right? So you do not have a choice of saying that I'm going to not open my door. Whether you open the door, whether you don't open the door, it's anyway going to come in. So you might as well embrace it. I think when you point that out, that if you don't embrace, you don't even just exist. You go bust. And that's where there are various examples taken. Again, because this is a public discussion, we'll not take names of firms. But very often we all know there is an example of a particular firm was taken, how they did not go digital, and then they went bankrupt, and they were industry leaders at that point in time. So I think when you use such examples to learn from history, that in this industry they did not make the change at the right time, and therefore they went extinct. I mean, imagine you are a world leader and you just don't exist in a few years. I mean, can you fathom that? I think when you use such examples, then people come on board. Then the other is the point that I possibly mentioned earlier. even when you think big, right? And again, there's a 3-step process which we learned in GE. Think big, start small. You always start small because you don't boil the ocean, right? And then you scale big. So when you tell people that, you take those baby steps and eventually, it leads towards success, then one, you overcome the mindset, two, you're able to help them overcome inertia. And once you start doing that, you find that, this journey has a self-generating momentum. The moment you get into it, suddenly people get interested, you start getting some success, then you get on, then you bring on board more people, they start, putting in, more, interest into it. So like a snowball, right, which picks up, volume and momentum, as it gathers pace, right? I think that's what I have seen, typically seen, works in this particular arena.
Excellent. Excellent. I think I agree with you. Take baby steps, think small, but scale. Don't try to boil the ocean. Don't go big bang.
Yes.
Never works. It's too much to gamble away.
Right.
Next question is interesting one, but I'll put it to Subs. It's a slightly tricky one too, Subs. I don't know how somehow the tricky questions are coming to you, but let's see how far this goes, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, like when you set up hyperautomation, during the hyperautomation framework setup, you have to set up an automation COE and an operational COE, all those wonderful centers of excellence that will help manage this process. So at what stage do you start thinking of them? Do you start thinking them in the discovery stage itself, or do you wait till you scale or manage this? Just going by your experience.
I can just jump in and answer here on this question. There is no time to wait today because the world and the markets are changing and the technologies are leading the changes here. There's absolutely no wait further. There's nothing like a good time now. But the most important relevant aspect here I would recommend is the organization capable? One is just thinking, another is ensuring there is an organizational capability built in. So right now, we must know which customer problems we are unable to solve. We must know as an organization where the risks are coming to our existence. If we know these two strategically, we must immediately start to make the habit in the organization develop, to thinking process to develop. We must start some COEs in particular technology areas that make sense from a problem perspective. For example, if you say we are going to address an adjacency market in the automation world, I come from manufacturing automation, so I more or less tell where performances, when I offer to my customer their product performance much higher. That means I must start thinking about what technologies I can use to do kind of a digital twin of the performance, assess that and show it to the customer, which means I must today itself start investing on technologies influencing the digital twin, technologies influencing performance scaling. Today's answer available is in deep learning techniques, model developments and training them. It needs huge data. There's no other wait time. We have to start the COE, pick the low hanging fruit. While the journey of the COE goes on, we must look through market big problems which are unsolved by today's automation and experiment, gain more confidence. That's the only way. Yes, COEs are a must. The flavors and names could be different. Some companies might use it as short POCs. Some companies might use it as strategic investment. Some companies might call it as internal core labs. But the myth or the focus behind all of them is same, that I must experiment fast from my market perspective.
Excellent. I hope people were writing that down. I think that was very interesting. Martin, what's your experience with the COEs and the both for R&D as well as the transformation COEs? Discovery or maintain, sustain and maintain?
No, so Vikram, I have been a part of a couple of COEs in my life, and I have been the COE lead at my stint with Barclays. So for lean and automation. So I have got few hands-on learnings that I'll share, given me this opportunity. See, what happens is when we set up a COE, initially the concept was to set it up from the point of build, operate, transfer, and then delivery teams take it over and they run their own initiatives, or different operations team create resident automation champions, RACs, and those resident automation champions run it from the operation standpoint. But then later on, when people realize that COE is not something small tea shop that you're opening in the entire enterprise, and it will actually grow up to a big superstore while you grow your automation journey, then what happens is that people started realizing and started thinking aloud what could be the right model of COE that they need to build and execute. Whether it has to be a centralized COE, decentralized COE, or a federated COE, because there has to be a clear-cut approach, clear-cut framework, the way they can actually run a COE depending upon how are their sponsorship going to be in the future and how are their business ready for automation at an enterprise level, at a business unit level. So all those different classification of COEs comes into play. And now COE is not only limited to shared services or captive organizations. Even the organizations where I worked, like IBM, like Wipro, all the global systems integrators, they have their professional services COE, which are very, very highly responsible for onboarding any new solution, developing new capability, because it's not hard to every time cross train the same level of resource. So definitely, someone is a human, so you can't train a human on n number of technologies. So you have to create a strategy that how many resources you will train, what skill sets are ancillary, what skill set are primary for the ongoing larger demand from business. So COE plays a very, very significant role when we talk about whether it's a captive organization or it's a professional services organization.
Very good, very well said, Vatul. And I think all of your experience in the COEs is coming out. Deepu, the next question is to you, not because it's anything specific to your industry, but the person who asked the question is from your industry.
Okay.
Let me help you out, help both of you out from the same industry.
Sure.
So there are the question is very simple. There are a lot of complexities in a very large organization. It's not a straightforward throughput, simple process with less handovers. So how do you how do you dig deeper into the complexity? Do you use principles like design thinking for them?
Yeah. No, I think it's again a very relevant question, Vikram. It gets into the nuts and bolts. See, there are of course various frameworks around. There is design thinking, there is Lean, there is Six Sigma. There are plenty of tools available, right? You need to pick the right tool. So I'll not get into the tools because the tool depends on the situation. But it's essentially, I'd say, a 4-step process. The first step is to, again, as I always keep saying, and there I've been a stuck record, is to basically start with what the customer is saying. Because otherwise people end up barking up the wrong tree. So clearly focus on what the customer is saying. The second is once you hear what customer is saying, then of course validate that through what your stakeholders are saying and also through your benchmarking. So you get multiple dimensions of the problem that you are fixing. The third thing then is to currently look at your current inventory of or the current landscape of systems and processes. And typically you will find that they have been set up over a period of time. They've evolved over a period of time, not necessarily keeping the customer at the center of everything, but maybe because there may have been a siloed departmental view. Let us again take, because we're talking about insurance and the questioner is from insurance. You take a large company which is selling multiple products. If the customer goes to the company and says, I have a motor insurance policy and a health insurance policy, he is likely to be sent to 2 different departments. There are very few people who are going to say that, let me take a customer-centric view and help you out on everything, right? So that is where you will find that it's possibly a departmental, centric view. It's not a customer-centric view. Then the fourth step, where you apply the tool, once you've got these inputs and, you figure out your current inventory, that is when, you kick in with this tool and then, you streamline the landscape, So it depends on, it depends on the situation. For example, you use a particular tool, like you use Lean when you know what the problem is. You use Six Sigma when you do not know what the solution is. You need to figure it out. So depending on where you stand, and similarly, you can't go in for digitization right up front if your process is broken. You need to fix it, you need to re-engineer it, and then you need to go. So when you follow this process, you find that you've got the right inputs, and then you've gone about it in the right manner, because Six Sigma or any tool that also tells you the path that you need to take. And then once you do that, more often than not, because the input and the process have both been in sync, the output is very highly likely to be a simple solution. So I've seen that if you adopt this approach, it is able to break through the complexity. I think we've lost Vikram, right? So
Yeah, I think.
he's back.
Vikram is back.
Is that?
Are you there, Vikram? For
Yeah,
some time,
I
you were like
told you that
Doordarshan.
something will happen.
We
I
could see
told
the
you,
Doordarshan
no matter
logo
how
for
many
some.
dry runs we do, I told you, no matter how many dry runs we do, something will happen during the actual session.
No, I think
Yeah.
that was quick, but you've frozen again. So I just want to ask the audience here if anybody has any more questions. Anybody would like to,
Yeah. While they dig up the questions, let's go with closing statements, starting with Subs. On hyperautomation. Subs, your 30 seconds or less for closing.
Sure. Hyperautomation, I would simply say, is not a topic for future, it's a topic today. And organization preparation for that is an essentiality.
Excellent. Well, very well said. Deepu?
Yeah, I'll just bring in two dimensions. I think everybody focused on digitizing the physical. Now people want to see, a bit of, human interaction. So today the accent is on humanizing the digital.
Thank you, Deepu. Very, very well said. I think you can frame that. Vartul, your closing comments.
I look at it that hyper automation itself has become a combination of a suite of technology, and I see hyper automation not going to operate in isolation. It needs to have a very strong hookup with cloud adoption and with analytics. So I don't see hyper automation going to travel a long distance without cloud adoption and without analytics.
Oh, excellent. Very, very well said. I think cloud analytics, that the entire paradigm. Deepu talks about the physical and the conversational, bringing customer in. And Soup say it's already too late. If you are thinking about the future, the hyper automation is already here. So I think that was an excellent session. Thank you all for taking time out. I don't see there are any more questions because I think we have not confused them, we have convinced them. And
Yeah.
they have just shut the laptops and gone running to get their hyper automation projects running. So that's pretty much what we have done today afternoon. Thank you all for taking time out. I know all of you are busy, and despite your schedules, you could come here and spare your knowledge and give a lot of insights, practical insights. Not academic insights into how hyper automation works, the challenges, how to calculate ROI, how to involve everybody, take principles. So thank you all. And Suman, it's over to you from me.
And
I
Vikram, thanks to you as well for excellent moderation. I think you kept it really alive. You were not just a curator. I think, with humor and, with excellent time management, you made it really come alive. So very good job done by you as
I also pushed some tricky questions. Thanks, Vikram. Thanks for making it live and cool.
well.
Thank you very much.
No, I just want to say, thanks to all the speakers, especially Sobs, Vartul, Deepu, and Vikram for this wonderful session. And Vikram has, like always, he has been fantastic the way he moderates. What's also amazingly good to see is so many people coming and joining us from various parts of the world. We've got people from South Africa, we've got people from UK joining us, Philippines, Doha, Qatar, Sri Lanka, and obviously India. Which goes to show that when you have good speakers and when you have content which is fresh, and which is futuristic in nature, and you have a good platform like this, you will always get these kind of people to come back and listen to you and gain some knowledge out of it. Also, before we leave, I almost missed out on this. Today is Deepu's birthday, so from all of us at the IT, and I'm sure from all the audience here, wishing you a very very happy birthday, Deepu.
Thank you so much, Suman. That's a very sweet gesture on your part. Thank you so much. It just
No, our pleasure. Your life is anyway insured, and the next generations also. But
thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, it was a great session. I think very informative. I was hoping if people would have some more questions, but like Vikram, you said, I completely agree with you. I think we have convinced them. Otherwise, we keep on seeing
So,
questions popping up. Yeah, Batul.
so Suman, shall we have this session every year on Deepu's birthday?
That's a good point.
That's a good suggestion.
Thanks, Vatul.
See you. Have a great,
Thank
great.
you. Have a great weekend. All
Yeah.
of you, take care,
Thank you
stay
all.
safe. Yeah, please take care of yourself and stay safe. And we'll see you around again next month with a new topic on digital conversations. Until then,
Have a
thank
great
you.
day.
Goodbye. Take care.
Bye.
Have a great day. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye.